Yeah.
I was curious about unsafe work practices, day laborers, and injuries that come as a result of not being trained for the jobs they're there to do.
You know, it's a problem because the labor hall doesn't necessarily know what you're really going to be doing when you get out there. They'll give you safety equipment if they know. But they don't necessarily know. The safety equipment they have is sometimes no good. In my labor hall, if you said you didn't have steel-toed boots, they would give you some rubber boots which had steel toes. And that ain't too good for some jobs. So I always told them I did. Right? And working at the Clover plant, I dropped something on my foot and couldn't walk for 10 minutes. Right? And the guys in that plant had special shoes, which cost $200 a piece, which ain't no day labor going to come up with, right? If you get hurt, the smartest thing to do is if you can make it to work or if you can lay out a couple days, don't say nothing. Because the labor hall, you don't want them thinking you're injury prone. Does that make sense? You keep your mouth shut. One time I reported an injury because I was mad at the foreman. I thought he was negligent. And they had me fill out a form and they said, do you need to see a doctor? I guess for first aid. But generally, I never saw an OSHA inspector on any job. I saw elevator inspectors, but you see, they're backing up the insurance companies and the owners. An OSHA guy I never saw. On one job I called OSHA, I was working with what's called an open auger. And the OSHA guy said, open augers are always illegal. I said, how quick can you get out of here? He said, it'd be 6 weeks at the soonest. So I just didn't go in the labor hall the next day. Let them send somebody else to do my job. But that's no solution, right? Generally speaking, the protections workers have are much weaker now than they were when they were enacted. That's what's happened to our country in these years. We're better off than the Latino workers because we got some protection, but it ain't much. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Did you, now that you've gone through the experience and worked with those guys, did you ever reveal that, your other life, or with the book coming out, and are they at all aware that their stories are represented?
I have no idea if they're aware. I doubt it, because they ain't big readers. And I don't think my dispatchers and those people are big readers. And while I was doing it, only the head of my department, my wife, maybe 2 friends knew. Because I didn't want the labor hall figuring that out. I mean, I used my real name, which is a change for me, and used my real ID, not somebody. In the old days, I had a driver's license with my picture on it, other names. It was a felony, but in the old days, it's getting harder to do. Well, it's not that hard. For $200, I could have got fake papers, but I use my own stuff. But as far as I know, there's no one knows.
I have a question about, in a situation where an employer says, I want this individual worker for an extended period of time, and that kind of deal, is there not a time limit in which you can only have that worker work for so long before you have to either put them on payroll?
No, it's the opposite. The contract will say that the employer cannot put you on payroll until you've been there like 3 months, or some places 6 months. But if the employer doesn't want to put you on payroll, if he wants to keep you working for the day labor agency, there's no limit. And I talked to a guy on an airplane a couple of weeks ago. He got to talking to me, another redneck type like me, And I told him I'd written a book, and he said, what's it about? And I said, day labor. And he says, oh. He said, I got 5 employees with day laborers. And I got to talking to him. He told me they were all white. And I thought that was funny. Because if it's hard to find 5 white workers on one crew because white workers are the minority. I said, how did you get 5 white workers out of the day labor hall? He says, well, I hired them myself. And then I told them, go sign up with the labor hall and then you can start working for me. And I said, why did you do that? He says, well, if I got to lay them off, there's no unemployment. That's the labor hall's problem. I ain't got no paperwork, blah, blah, blah. Told me he was paying $20.18 an hour. But that sort of laundering of workers is now becoming a mass phenomenon. And because it works to the employer's advantage.
Is anyone addressing that?
There's something called the National Labor Employment Law Project. I think it's 4 lawyers in New York. Look them up on the web. The unions in New York City are now crusading to get the city to quit hiring day laborers.
Yeah,
Is-
I'm sorry, where does it need to start? Where does that action need to start? Would it be at the city level? Would it be, writing your legislators, your congressmen?
I think to succeed, it has to start with the AFL-CIO and congressmen, right? I mean, one person writing a congressman, they're going to lay it down to their contributors list. If you're one of them big contributors, they're going to listen to you. But, I mean, the Roosevelt administration tried to bring labor agencies under regulation. Perkins, the labor secretary, held hearings all over the country and wanted a national law passed to regulate it, but it got stopped. And it ain't been picked up since then. In fact, it's gone backwards. At that time, labor halls were subject to some regulation as employment agencies. But in the 60s, Manpower went and got all the state legislatures to reclassify labor halls as suppliers of labor services rather than employment. So they're service providers and they're outside of regulation. And they just went state by state and did that. So it's got to be done legislatively. It could be done on the state level, right? All states could set up regulatory commissions. And I certainly think they should, just so they know who is renting workers, right? Who's in the business. But they don't even know today. I mean, there's no registry. So that's where it would have to start. But, maybe if we... I want to say why the AFL-CIO was crusading against it. In a lot of cities, the garbage men are city employees and therefore have certain benefits, retirement, sick leave, and so on. But in most suburban communities, it's private companies picking up the garbage and it's using day laborers to do it. And it's tough work. 500 trash cans a day, 5 to 7. That's tough. You got to jump up and down that truck all day. And if it's raining, you still got to do it, right? Tough work. One of the guys I knew got laid off from one of those companies after 2 years. And he had gotten a couple of raises. He was a day employee of the day labor hall all this time. And he was happy as he could be, bragging to me that in the last year he had made $24,000. Now that's what happiness is to a day laborer. It's sad. Another woman, a woman in her 50s, used to sit next to me a lot. I think because we're both white and she was single. But who knows? Maybe I'm complimenting myself. One day she was telling me, I had a dream last night. I dreamed that I found $10 in my jean pocket. That's what day labor hall is, where people have dreams about finding $10. Something needs to be done, right? Poor lady. But I don't know of anybody who's proposed it right now other than the unions in New York City. And that I learned after I wrote the book.
What kind of cut does the hall get out of the workers' pay?
It's roughly double. If you're making 7 an hour, they're probably getting 15. If you're making 8, they're probably getting 18, 19. roughly double. On a day labor deal, now when you go essentially permanent, labor hall drops its take because it's just automatic, right? And you as a day laborer have to make one concession. They only have to pay you once a week. But to simplify the labor hall, it's paperwork. But at the day labor basis, 100%. At the permanent basis, it can be awful thin margin because all the labor hall is really doing is doing the paperwork, right? They don't even see you. They don't supervise you. I mean, there's nothing there.